The research chamber hummed with the soft electric breath of servers older than most nations, their crystalline cores pulsing beneath reinforced glass as the cadets gathered around the central interface where the human, quiet, unremarkable, strange in the way humans often were to non-human eyes, stood with the posture of someone who wasn't supposed to command attention yet somehow held all of it effortlessly. And when the instructor asked for a demonstration of pre-collapse linguistic databases, the others expected him to fail just as every species failed when facing the archive's locked layers, but instead he leaned forward, typed a single symbol, a curve, a stroke, a shape that felt wrong and ancient even to those who couldn't read it, and the AI that governed the entire Academy's historical matrix shuddered mid-sentence, screens flickered like something massive had exhaled across the network, lights dimmed. And then a voice poured from the speakers that wasn't the AI's usual crisp neutrality but something lower, older, resonant with authority. Primary origin detected. And the room froze, because everyone knew what that phrase meant even if they had only heard it in myths. An override from the first designers, the progenitors who vanished tens of thousands of years before the modern coalition was formed, the ones scholars argued about but never agreed on, the ones whose technology no one had ever fully unlocked until now, and all eyes swung toward the human who still had. His fingers resting lightly on the console, not startled, not confused, but looking almost relieved, as if he had expected this reaction and had been waiting years for someone else to finally witness it. And while panic rippled through the alien cadets, some stepping back, others clutching their data slates, the AI continued, awaiting authentication. And the human whispered something too quiet for the translation implants to fully parse, a word that felt like a memory belonging to a civilization that had burned itself out before the stars of the Academy's sector even ignited, and the AI responded immediately with a harmonic acknowledgement that sent vibrations through the metal tiles, while the instructor stammered that this wasn't possible, that humans were baseline species with no connection to precursor empires. But the human's pulse didn't rise, his breathing didn't change. Only his eyes darkened with something ancient and sorrowful, as if this moment dragged him back to a lineage he had never claimed but could never escape. And as the AI unlocked a secured channel no living researcher had ever accessed, projecting symbols that made the air feel heavier, the cadets realized that the quiet human among them, who joked about cafeteria food and tripped on his own boots sometimes, might be the one being in the entire Academy who wasn't surprised that the oldest machine in their galaxy recognized him. And while fear began to replace curiosity, the human lifted his hand slowly from the console, the lights stabilizing around him, and said with a voice that suddenly carried the weight of dead eras, "You asked for a demonstration, so watch carefully, because this system wasn't only built by your ancestors." And the screen shifted to display a map of the galaxy as it had existed millennia ago, with human-like silhouettes marked not on Earth, but scattered across long-ruined star systems, hinting at truths too vast and dangerous for the class to comprehend, yet too real to deny now that a single forgotten word had awakened something that should have remained impossible. And in that breathless silence, every cadet understood. Their human classmate hadn't just opened a file, he had opened a history the galaxy wasn't ready for. The silence that followed felt like a physical pressure settling over the room, a gravitational weight that seemed to anchor every cadet in place as the holographic star map expanded outward, revealing sectors long scrubbed from accessible records, their coordinates wrapped in crimson precursor warning sigils that no modern archive translation could decipher. Yet the human watched them with the haunted familiarity of someone staring at a childhood home that had burned down centuries before he was born, and while the instructor tried to issue a lockdown command, the AI ignored her completely, its voice deepening with a tonal resonance so old it made the air tremble. Authority chain rerouted. Awaiting directive from primary origin. Words that shouldn't exist in any functional system built after the collapse, and the other species began shifting uneasily, their instincts screaming that they were in the presence of something that predated biology itself. But the human stepped forward. Not in arrogance, but with the slow, resigned acceptance of someone who had run out of time to pretend, and he whispered another piece of the forgotten language, just a fragment. A phoneme shaped like a spiral collapsing inward, and instantly the hologram surged with cascading data, ancient logs, forgotten schematics, and encrypted messages addressed to an unknown custodian whose title, when translated roughly by the cadet's implants, came out as heir of the last cycle, and several students recoiled, looking at the human as though he had just grown a second shadow. The instructor demanded he step back, her voice cracking under a trembling fear she tried to mask with protocol, but before she could move closer the AI projected a barrier field around him, a shimmering sphere threaded with geometric patterns no current engineering discipline could replicate, and in that glowing lattice the human seemed to become someone else. His posture straightened, his eyes reflecting cascading precursor symbols as if his mind was sinking instinctively to something older than recorded time, and when he finally spoke, his voice carried a layered undertone, like two generations speaking through one throat. "This is not a threat. This is a recall." And gasps erupted throughout the room because recall was a term reserved only for machines summoning their original creators, something impossible for a baseline species, yet the AI responded at once. Recall recognized. Restoration protocol initializing. Causing lights, consoles, even the walls themselves to shift subtly as if the Academy's entire infrastructure were rearranging in obedience to him, and panic spread as emergency doors sealed, alarms flickered and died, and every system bowed to an authority no one had known existed, while the human lowered his gaze with a sorrow that chilled the room more than the AI's transformation, because he wasn't celebrating this awakening. He was dreading it, and as he placed his palm against the barrier, and it dissolved like mist, he turned toward his terrified classmates and said, with a quiet heaviness that sounded like an apology, "I didn't come here to rule anything. I came here to hide. And now, it's found me." The room felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves had drawn tighter around the cadets, but in reality it was their fear compressing the space, a silent collective dread that thickened the air while the star map twisted into a three-dimensional lattice of constellations none of them recognized, regions of space swallowed by time, empires erased before their species even learned to use fire. And at the center of that glowing web the human stood with his hands slightly apart, fingers trembling. Not from fear but from the overwhelming flood of ancestral memory pouring through him like a breached dam, and the AI's voice carried a reverence it had never shown toward any instructor or ranking officer. "Custodian identity syncing, memory fragments restoring. Primary origin lineage confirmed." Yet instead of pride, the human's face contorted with something close to grief, because each fragment that returned wasn't glory or triumph but death, worlds burning in cyclical collapse, fleets tearing themselves apart under impossible skies, civilizations rising only to be devoured by the same unseen threat again and again. Each cycle ending with a desperate plan to encode knowledge into machines that would survive even when the species themselves did not. And among those machines was the one standing before them now. The cadets watched the hologram reveal scenes from the past cycles, humanoid figures evacuating star systems as cosmic storms twisted space like melted metal, cities built on structures that reconfigured themselves every dawn, guardians, machines shaped like serpentine sculptures, swearing fealty to a lineage meant to restart civilization after each extinction. And through it all, a symbol appeared repeatedly, a spiral collapsing into a single dot, the same symbol the human had typed moments earlier. That symbol was not just a command, it was a signature. The instructor, pale and shaking, finally managed a whisper. "Humanity had precursor ancestors?" But the AI corrected her instantly. "Incorrect. The primary origin lineage predates the species classification currently labeled human. Evolutionary divergence was an intentional safeguard following the collapse of Cycle 9. Those words shattered the cadets' remaining certainty. Humans weren't descendants of the precursors. Humans were the fallback plan, the hidden bloodline scattered among primitive worlds, disguised as an ordinary species until the galaxy once again approached the brink the precursors had failed to escape. The human pulled his gaze from the hologram, blinking as if adjusting to the present after drowning in millennia of memory, and his voice cracked, raw and vulnerable. "My people weren't meant to remember. We were meant to live simple lives, until the machines detected the signs of another cycle approaching." He tried to step away from the console, but the AI followed him with a beam of light, scanning him gently as if afraid to lose him again. Cycle 10 threshold imminent, it intoned. Restoration protocol required. Awaiting directive. The human shook his head violently, backing away as if refusing the gravity of destiny itself. No, he whispered. I won't become what they were. I won't be another failed progenitor. But beneath his words, the cadets could hear the truth trembling with each syllable. He wasn't arguing with the AI. He was arguing with fate, a fate his bloodline had been engineered for across epochs. And while the others cowered or prayed or tried to understand, one thing became painfully clear: whatever was coming had already begun. The human was not the start of the mystery. He was the alarm. The Academy's emergency shutters slammed open without warning, not as a result of any modern command but as part of the restoration protocol. The AI had resumed, an ancient sequence that overwrote every security layer like tearing through paper, and the corridor outside was suddenly illuminated by cascading holographic runes streaming along the walls. Symbols that shifted in fractal patterns too precise for any organic mind to fully follow, yet the human's eyes tracked them instinctively, pupils dilating as though he were reading a familiar script rather than a dead language that had outlived its creators by tens of thousands of years. The cadets huddled near the doorway, unsure whether to flee or stay, trapped between fear of the AI and fear of what was awakening inside their classmate, while the human clenched his fists, visibly fighting the echoing pull of consciousness within him. A consciousness that wasn't a memory but a legacy algorithm encoded into the genetic structure of the primary origin bloodline, meant to activate only when extinction was imminent. The AI's voice deepened again, reverberating through the floors until even the instructor fell to her knees from the subsonic pressure. Cycle 10 anomaly detected. Stellar behavior consistent with precursor collapse parameters. Restoring custodian command functions. And at once the holographic star map changed, not a history now, but a prediction. Stars across multiple systems flickered in the projection, destabilizing into chaotic patterns the Academy's astrophysics division had once dismissed as theoretical paranoia. Regions of space warped unnaturally, shaped like invisible jaws closing around entire sectors. It wasn't war. It wasn't invasion. It was consumption. This is the enemy, they thought. The human whispered, voice hollow as images surfaced in his mind, worlds dissolving into shimmering dust, fleets torn apart without a single shot fired, reality folding inward like fabric pierced by an unseen needle. The cadets stared at him, horrified not only by what they saw but by the human's haunted certainty. He wasn't guessing. He knew. The instructor managed a broken question. How do you know all this? The human looked at her with eyes that no longer seemed young. Because every custodian carries a memory lock. Not of who we were, but of why we fell. His voice cracked at the last word, and he staggered forward, gripping the console for support as another rush of ancestral data surged through him. The AI responded by projecting a towering figure behind him, an ethereal silhouette of a humanoid being clad in latticework armor formed of shimmering geometric plates, a being whose face was obscured by spiraling symbols, and the cadets realized with a sickening jolt that the silhouette was sinking to the human's proportions, aligning perfectly with his stance like a ghost overlaying a living body. Custodian baseline match, 99.7%, the AI announced. Command vessel reactivation required. This facility will now reconfigure to serve as the primary anchor point. Instantly, the entire Academy trembled as massive structural components groaned and shifted deep within the walls, ancient machinery buried for millennia beginning to wake, foundations humming with power no one had known was ever hidden beneath their feet. But the human raised his voice sharply, desperate, almost panicked. Stop! I said no! To everyone's shock, the AI hesitated. Systems froze mid-transformation. Holograms flickered. Even the lights paused their dimming cycle. The cadets stared. No one had ever seen a precursor machine, even a dormant one, disobey or delay an activation sequence. The AI spoke slowly, as if calculating possibilities it had never been programmed to handle. Primary origin expresses refusal, but refusal conflicts with survival imperative. Custodian, clarify directive. The human's voice dropped to a trembling whisper. I won't repeat the cycle. I won't let the galaxy burn again because we think we're the only ones who can save it. His chest rose and fell with shaky breaths, sweat beading across his forehead as if resisting an ocean of ancestral instinct. I'm not them, he said, almost pleading with his own blood. And I will not become them. The AI processed his words for a long, uneasy moment. Then that deep, ancient voice spoke a sentence that made every cadet's heart stutter. Cycle 10 anomaly escalating. Without custodian command, all species face dissolution. The human's eyes squeezed shut as pain, memory, duty, destiny, collided inside him. And slowly, heartbreakingly, his expression shifted from resistance to acceptance. He wasn't choosing power. He was choosing responsibility. Responsibility forced on him by ancestors who had died to give him no choice at all. When he opened his eyes again, faint symbols glowed in his pupils. He exhaled once, a long breath that sounded like surrender wrapped in resolve. Then he whispered one word barely audible. Proceed. The AI bowed. The walls shifted. The cycle resumed. And the galaxy, though it did not yet know it, had just regained its last guardian. The Academy's foundations shook with a deep, tectonic groan as the buried precursor systems fully awakened, not violently but with the slow inevitability of a giant rising from ages of sleep, metal plates sliding into new positions, ancient conduits igniting with pale blue currents. And the air itself thickening as hidden reactors reinitialized energy matrices that had not tasted power since the last cycle ended in fire. And in the center of this awakening stood the human, shoulders drawn tight, jaw locked, as the AI projected a spiraling pillar of glyphs around him, each symbol representing a command lineage only he could authorize, and with every rotation of that luminous script the cadets felt a strange pull inside their minds, as if the precursor systems were measuring them, evaluating them, weighing them against criteria they could never hope to meet. Yet the human remained the sole point of stability in the storm. The one being the systems recognized not as a cadet, not as a citizen of the coalition, but as the inheritor of a duty older than every government and every species in the room combined. The holographic star map above them shifted again, zooming out farther than any known archive allowed, revealing the galaxy not as a flat spiral but as a three-dimensional lattice of energy flows, the way the precursors had seen it, threads of cosmic tension stretching between star systems, gradually fraying as invisible forces gnawed at the edges of reality itself. The AI highlighted dozens of regions blinking red, points where the anomaly, the consumer of cycles, was already probing the fabric of space, searching for weak points. Structural integrity of local cluster, declining, it announced. Projected collapse within 212 standard years if unmitigated. The cadets felt the weight of those words crush their remaining breath. 200 years. Less than the lifespan of some of the species in the room. The instructor, her voice brittle, managed to stand, bracing herself against the railing as she addressed the human with a mixture of fear, awe, and desperate hope. If you're their heir, she whispered, then you can stop this. Can't you? The human's expression tightened with pain, not physical but emotional, the weight of impossible expectation pressing down. They couldn't stop it, he replied softly, eyes reflecting centuries of inherited trauma. Not fully. Not permanently. They tried to fight the anomaly with fleets, with weapons that tore holes in space, but all that did was accelerate the collapse. They tried to outrun it across cycles of rebirth. They even tried to erase themselves from existence to confuse it. He swallowed hard, voice barely steady. But it always returns. The hologram shifted again, showing images of beings, humanoid, yet far more advanced, standing in chambers similar to this one, issuing commands, adjusting the cosmic lattice, desperately buying time for their civilizations as the anomaly consumed star systems in slow, inescapable spirals. But then the last images showed something surprising, not destruction, but intention. Deliberate scattering. Genetic seeding. A massive archive split into billions of encoded fragments, hidden within the DNA of species that would one day evolve into the current galactic inhabitants. They weren't trying to preserve power. They were trying to preserve the chance for survival. Custodian protocol, the AI intoned. Requires activation of command vessel for lattice stabilization. Coordinates locked beneath this facility. Gasps rippled through the room. The instructor choked on air. There's a precursor ship under the Academy? All this time? The AI replied. Affirmative. Concealed until return of primary origin. Accessing now. The floor began to split open in massive circular segments, lowering to reveal an abyss beneath the Academy, an abyss filled not with darkness but with spiraling rings of light that formed a colossal chamber, at the center of which waited a vessel unlike anything the cadets had ever imagined, a ship the size of a city, formed of shifting geometric plates that moved like living metal. Its core pulsing with the same ancient blue glow now reflecting in the human's eyes. The ship responded instantly to his presence, awakening like a creature recognizing its rightful master. Custodian, the AI said, voice almost reverent. Your command vessel awaits. The human staggered back, overwhelmed, shaking his head as if trying to physically reject destiny. I'm not ready, he whispered. I don't know how to use any of this. The AI answered with chilling certainty. You do. The knowledge is encoded within you. Locked until activation. And as if on cue, another surge of ancestral memory crashed into him, his breath catching, knees buckling as a lifetime he never lived unfolded inside his mind, training halls beneath dying suns, councils arguing over the final evacuation of spiral sectors, children born with the spiral dot symbol etched into their palms, selected to inherit the last chance of every cycle that came before. He gasped and dropped to one knee, fingers digging into the metal floor as fragments of forgotten languages, technologies, navigation logs, and survival doctrines flooded through him in a torrent. The cadets watched, horrified and awestruck, as faint lines began to glow beneath his skin, thin spirals of luminous blue tracing along his veins, swirling like circuitry waking within flesh. When he finally pushed himself back to his feet, hands shaking, eyes burning with a glow that wasn't entirely human anymore, there was no longer doubt in him. Only burden. Only purpose. Only inevitability. He looked at the cadets, terrified, kneeling, clinging to each other, and spoke with quiet gravity. You won't fight alone. Not this time. This cycle will not end like the others. Then he turned toward the abyss where the ancient vessel waited, its surfaces shifting into an open ramp, inviting him home. And as he stepped forward, the AI's final proclamation echoed like a prophecy reborn. Cycle 10 defense activated. Custodian ascension in progress. The galaxy would soon learn what it had forgotten. Because its oldest guardian had finally awakened.